So good morning, everybody, and thanks for getting up so early to witness the first talks. So as usual, I'm going to take 380,000 million kilometers from here. So I will be reflecting on roughly more than 20 years of analog research we've been doing in the Austrian Space Forum, with a little thought in the beginning stating that, well, analog research is nothing new. Technically, you could claim that even the Apollo trainings in Meteor Crater were some sort of analog practice as well as mission training. And that's what we see here, that analog missions are kind of a training practice ground. In the Austrian Space Forum, and that's the reason why there's stations popping up across the world. Some of you might have witnessed the world's biggest analog last month, 16 habitats on 5 continents, which we were privileged to manage in the Mission Coordination Center in Vienna. The bottom line is, in the Austrian Space Forum, we see it in a way to reduce the number of mistakes we do on Mars. So because we have one fundamental challenge in spaceflight, and that is we always know what we found when we get back the measurement data from what the magnetic field strength was, what the image looks like, and what the temperature was there. But we never find what we never know what we could have found if we were looking at a different place, at a different time, with different instrumentation. So when we go into the field with our expeditions, we deliberately ask, especially our geoscience communities, to not study the literature and the standard books about that particular test site. So they go in blinded. We only give them material that is likely to be available for an actual mission, like high-resolution satellite imagery, maybe hyperspectral information or so. If we're very nice to them, they might get a sample from a sample return with a little rock specimen or so. And then we go in with our methodologies, with the Raman spectrometer, with the robots, whatever tools we have. And then they determine the story of the particular site and do their geoscientific evaluations and make their hypothesis building. There was an old wadi, there was an old like hydrated minerals or so to be found. And after the mission, we unblind them. And then we go to the standard textbooks of that particular site and see what has been found there in like 100 years of geoscientific research. And then we compare the delta. And then we see, oh, we missed this. We should have brought that particular equipment. We should have changed the sequence of activities in a way. And so from mission to mission, we see that the delta gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So once we go to Mars, we have a good chance of not overlooking something of relevance. That's the scientific philosophy we have in our missions. So we've been doing this for many years now, 15 field expeditions, anything from the Northern Sahara to Oman to the Caucasus last year. We were in Israel, we went subsurface into cave systems, for instance. We had more than 200 peer-review selected experiments, roughly 1/3 geoscience, 1/3 robotics, 1/3 human factors. That's a magical mix we usually have. That also includes a lot of logistics, as you can imagine. So the mission architecture is very important for us, and it's done in a slightly bigger way than in many other fields. And I want to talk about this in a little bit. So first of all, maybe I should step to the side to not block a few here. It is that we have the mission, the field crew in the test site, of course, with all the experiments. Then we choose a time delay of 10 minutes. That's a convenient, somewhat average value, one-way 10-minute time delay, which is technically not that trivial to implement. No TCP/IP protocol was optimized to include a delay. Usually you want to get rid of it, but this is quite challenging then, especially with video feeds, for instance. Having a 10-minute delay is not easy. And then we have the Mission Support Center in Austria. That's the ground segment with teams in the background. So sometimes we have research teams that are spread across the planet, which is very convenient if they are living and working in different time zones. So you have a scientific problem, let's say a spectra to be discussed or so, they can do it overnight, and the next morning when the MSC opens up operations, unless we have 24/7 missions, then they have the result from Canada dropping in because they've been working overnight, basically. Just to give you a quick example of what those missions can look like, it's going to be a lot of pictures here, but you get the stint. We did high altitude missions, and we hold at least the European record for the highest Mars analog mission at 2,800 meters altitude. By the way, done by a colleague from the Netherlands, so from Le Pays to the highest point. working on rock glaciers because there are also rock glaciers on Mars. So this is a nice concept to study, like subsurface georadar data and so on. Lots of virtual reality included, of course. We went subsurface. We know there are caves on Mars. Maybe some of them might have water ice resources as well. And we said, well, let's take a look at what this means operationally. And believe me, just having a Wi-Fi directional LAN kilometers into a cave is not a trivial thing to do. And we had a satellite dish on the outside of the cave entrance, broadcasting to a team at the JPL. They could literally look over the shoulders of the analog astronauts in the ice cave. And then we're stepping into ice that was more than 1,000 years old, which was used, if you look very closely on this, the magma rover here, you might see this, I know it's on the other side, a little bit of this cowbell structure. This was done for a calibration validation campaign for the Wisdom radar of the future European Mars rover, Benjamin Franklin, yeah, of course. Sorry, Rosalind Franklin. Lots of desert missions, obviously. I'm going to talk about this in more detail. And then we are looking for very diverse terrains, like in the Caucasus last year, in Armenia, in the Amash station. So the way this works basically is we are not compiling crews for every mission individually with all the support personnel. And we're talking about a lot of people. So on a typical mission, we have 200, 250 people on the march. From, let's say, 25 nations. That's a typical setting. So our official working language in the Austrian space form is BE, broken English. And that also means combining a lot of working cultures, obviously. So we have a number of what we call common trunk capabilities. We have a permanent mission support center in Austria now since a couple of years. This is the flight control room, as we call it. I will talk about this in more detail. We're also using now some augmented reality stuff. So we have like digital elevation model of the test site, and then you basically have the geoscientists that are zooming in with a realistic topographic image superimposed on the DEM model. So you have quite a nice level of situation awareness. It's not perfect yet, but we'll work on that. We have a permanent crew, a permanent team of right now 13 analog astronauts. They usually stay with us for a couple of years, so they are very diligently selected. I'll talk about this in a second. Then we have a ground operations support team, the Ghosts of Mars, which are also on site but not interacting. They are there for security, for safety. They are there for introducing anomalies. If we want to like break a wheel, they can do this overnight, for instance. And I'm very happy that we have the team lead of the ground operations support team here, Galiofe from Israel, who is really a trooper, and he's one of the most field experienced people we have. And then, of course, there is as boring as it might sound, but no bugs, no bug Rogers, means that administration also needs quite the staffing. We have 6 people permanent staff that are working in the background on this, also with financing and doing our tax filings and all this stuff. The first team that is activated for our mission plannings are the lawyers. Yeah? So you need frequency licensing, import regulations, ethics commissions, approvals. Are you allowed to fly a drone in that particular region? So this is quite a process in the background. So what you see in those pictures is just the tip of the iceberg. Everybody sees the nice spacesuits, yeah? But rarely people think of all the paperwork that is below that. So for every kilogram of mission hardware we put into the field, we have 10 kilograms of paperwork usually. And then we have a number in between the missions, a number of complementary laboratory activities. So we do extensive testing of our spacesuits. The simulators, I think they're still one of the more advanced systems worldwide. You go to cryo chambers at minus 110 degrees Celsius. You also do EMV tests. You put them on, I don't know if you're familiar with a vertical treadmill. We are actually now an ESA ground-based facility where you have strings that are holding the test subject in the horizontal, and they're pulled against a running band. And depending on the full pull force, you can emulate different gravity levels. And that allows you to study physiological workload patterns under Martian gravity using an exoskeleton that is mimicking the pressurization of the suit. So the physiological workload we can replicate there is pretty close to the real thing, we believe. And then you can do high precision 3D motion capturing and lots of other high-tech stuff. Sometimes our suit has to go to the hospital for checkups, and we are very lucky that in Innsbruck we have a CT that is just large enough for putting in an entire spacesuit. and looking for microfractures because of mechanical loads of the suit. Then we heard yesterday there is now quite some good evidence for lightning discharges for little wind hoses and dust devils on Mars. And so you don't want to be hit by a lightning flash with a spacesuit because you don't outrun it. So what we do, the material we are using is an aluminum layer that is basically producing a Faraday cage. And we need to verify that. And so we had a 6 megavolt Tesla coil that was actually discharging on the spacesuit. And I mean, don't try this at home. This can be dangerous. These are things where you take an actual risk. People are known to have died because of interaction and touching the secondary coil of a Tesla coil. That's not very healthy. And so these are tests where you literally have paramedics standing next to you with the defibrillator. And I'm very happy to report it worked out because I was the guy in the suit. But this is a risk we take here is a risk we are more confident to take on Mars, obviously. So we are grateful for every mistake we make. Every mistake we find out and we can find a remedy against it is a shielding towards the science, efficiency, and the safety of the future Mars crews. And that can also mean that you're looking into radiation absorption behavior. So we did a lot of modeling and even putting tissue samples of the spacesuit into a nuclear accelerator to look into the stopping power for cosmic radiation. So there was quite an effort behind it, obviously. So there is a long process for selecting the host countries. So this is ongoing right now for a mission in 27 and 28. There's a double mission coming up. Forget about the text here. It all ends in a contract again. So again, lawyers negotiating for typically a year until we have a proper arrangement with usually the local ministries or space agencies or somebody who has been tasked to work in those behalves. Just as a side note, this is a footnote here. We all are aware, I think, that analog stations are popping up around the globe like mushrooms in the dark. And so there is a bandwidth of experience, of professionality for the good and for the bad. And one of the things we see is that we need to be careful to maintain a common language. We understand the judge. What is the definition of an analog astronaut? What is the safety standards we should be observing? And there are two initiatives I just want to mention as a footnote here. One is the VSAPR, Vienna Statement on Analog Planetary Research. It's basically a joint statement of research teams across the world that say, yes, analog research is a serious science that has a lot of benefits for future Mars missions. It has been drafted together with colleagues from the United Nations Office for the Space Affairs, and we are the secretary organization for that. And then there's the International Guidelines and Standards of analogs, Jenny Hesterman's teams. That is an informal assembly of experienced people in the analog research world that are issuing recommendations what to look into when it comes to safety standards. So the new groups don't replicate mistakes us as old guys have been doing before. So this is something to look into and really highly recommendable. They have also cooking recipes, what to check, checklists, how to think about insurance issues, what do you have to do when you do ethics commission approvals or so like this. And then of course you need people who do this stuff. So our analog astronauts are highly international. In this case, Dr. Simone Paternostro from Italy, Dr. Thomas Weinen, an Air Force pilot and astrophysicist from the Netherlands, colleagues from Israel, from Austria supporting them. So just putting on the spacesuit itself takes about 3 hours. The suit has a mass of 50 kilograms, which means the weight to force ratio on Mars is the same you would have for a flight-worthy suit compared to our simulation suit. That was one of the requirements. And if you don't treat it well, it will not treat you well as well. So it's like a scuba diving suit, like a scuba diving equipment. You have to take care of the equipment just like an extension of your body. And so you do this testing, as I said. You have to have people who know what they're doing. So we have we call this the gateway drug. It's the Analog Mission Basic Training. It's a very short, very compact 16 hours training plus an exam that is valid for 2 years. So either do a recertification or you do a mission, followed by optional and advanced training, Analog Mission Advanced Training. that also has the option for a thesis. That means whenever we have a technical problem, as a gradation for the advanced course, you can tackle a problem. Like how do you do the workflow for a loss of signal in the field, for instance. Once you've accomplished that, you're qualifying for either the Mission Support Center or the field crews. There you have to go under a medical and psychological qualification test, and then you go into the mission-specific training, typically 40 to 80 hours before you are deployed to the field as a support personnel. This is not for the analog astronauts yet. For the analog astronauts, that's a different type of selection. Right now we have a call open. We just did a count on the last selection, 2019, where we investigated every successful candidate for 637 parameters. Everything from cholesterol level to the ability to endure boredom, anything to you throw them into the room with English-speaking teenagers or kids and tell them, well, entertain them, yeah? Because public speaking is one of the things you have to do. You throw a bunch of weird mix of cables on the table and tell them, well, what are those cables made of or so. I don't want to spoil too much because we have some potential candidates here, but it's very extensive. Yeah. Then they undergo a 5-month basic training with a number of exams. It's quite rigorous, so it's in 5 blocks, but even in between the blocks they do personal training and virtual training. Then they do recertifications, and then they enter the pool of analog astronauts from which we select the crews and the backup crews. And the backup crews are then usually also involved like in field activities, and the others go into the mission-specific training, roughly about 100 hours each. And then they go into the field. So it's quite a journey until they're in the field, but that is necessary because the experiment complexities and the operational constraints we have demand this level of education, basically. Just 2 quick examples of missions. For instance, like one of my favorite missions. Well, I don't have favorite missions, sorry. That's not politically correct. I have missions I particularly liked. Oman was such an example, 2018. The picture on top was taken on the 15th of February 2018 in Oman after a dust storm, so the haziness of the atmosphere is not photoshopped, that's real like this. The picture on the bottom was taken 2 weeks afterwards on Mars. And if it wouldn't be for the traces in the sand and the astronauts, it might be not trivial to differentiate which is Mars and which is Earth. And we have the chance of like have a 5 kilometer closed off to the public perimeter with armed forces, because sometimes we're in areas that are geopolitically a little bit sensitive. So we require from the host country to also implement the option for an armed denial of entry. And so that was done by the Oman forces, and you establish a station in the middle of nowhere. This was done by the Omani Ministry of Religious Affairs, because they are responsible for the astronomy clubs, and they were delegating the management of the mission to the astronomy groups, the Astronomical Society of Oman, and they had immense connections to petroleum companies, which just said, how many containers do you need? And so it's quite a logistics effort, as you can imagine. And of course, you also get to learn how to drive in the desert. I still remember when I've been driving in deserts a lot. I'm a desert junkie. And so every desert is different, so you have to learn how to drive in a desert. And of course, whoever drives in desert knows you get stuck at least once a day. That's the most normal thing to happen. Then you have to find a way how to pull things out. And we do this with those called Cecil, which is basically an overpowered electrical engine on a. So if a tank and a wheelchair have a baby, that's what it looks like, and they're extremely powerful. And still remember when we had our driving lessons with the Omani Armed Forces driving instructors. I was going like, I've been driving in many deserts, I know how to do this, and I started driving. And then the instructor on the passenger side went like, you, Gernot, you drive like a European. You need to think like a snake. Drive left, right, like a snake. And so I learned how to drive in Oman. That's a station we got just for the AMADEE 80 expedition. The Kepler station was the 500-year anniversary of Kepler's third law of orbital dynamics, where we had a group of almost 20 people staying there, including also some support personnel. And we were really very much secluded. Just once a baby camel got lost and got close, and Some of us were just admiring, oh, it's a nice camel. The other ones were looking about Googling camel recipes, but we're not allowed to hunt it. Okay. So when you go out, you do this in a spacesuit. As I said, 3 hours of donning time, lots of engineering work involved. So we can feel like it's like in the ISS, only a fraction of the productive time is devoted to science, because you still have to do cooking and cleaning and setting up the Wi-Fi routers and so, and really making sure that you optimize the science time is so important. One thing we always tell all the PIs that submit in experiments, you're not flying to Mars to fill out forms, how you feel. Yeah? It is important to understand the human psyche. That's a very important thing for sure. But you're there to knock down rocks. Yeah? With a quite geological mantra. If you don't understand it, smash it as a rock. Yeah? All this is backed by the Mission Support Center in Austria. This was the old control room. This is the new one, which we established for the world's biggest analog. So the older the mission support center grows, the more monitors are in there, obviously. But it's really needed because there's so much telemetry coming in from the field that you have to have a high level of situational awareness. Almost all of the console operators there have liaisons in the background, teams that are supporting them, like a remote science support, like flight planning, like human factors, the administrative side, and so on, the IT ground segment, and so on. And then you have a group of typically 15 to 25 people that are operating the mission from the Mission Support Center. So we have a split between the brain and the muscles. The muscles are in the field, the brain is in the on the ground, because they have the time to think through the data sets, basically. Another mission I wanted to point out was in the Negev Desert. Again, one reason why I went there is described by a picture. This time there is no astronauts in the images, but I'll ask the audience, who of you thinks that the top picture was taken on Mars? Raise your hand. Everybody allowed except the geologists in the room? Okay. Okay. Who thinks the lower picture was taken on Mars? Okay. Roughly the same number. Top picture is on Mars, the lower one on the Negev Desert. So it becomes not easy to identify anymore, unless you know what to look for, obviously. And that was the Ramon crater, a very unique erosion structure that is like a Disneyland for geologists. It's amazing how diverse the area is there from the geology point of view, and many of those features have geological twins on Mars. And before you go there, of course, you do a lot of training, a lot of procedural development, SOPs, contingency situations, and so on, to have an engine that is well greased. Remember, the most important things are the ones you don't see, like, for instance, what we call the exploration cascade. So as I said, it's very easy to waste a lot of time on Mars, right? If you don't do it diligently. So the question is, which asset do you deploy where and when and why? Now, if you have one rover on Mars where all the instruments sit on top of the rover, it's an easy answer, because where the rover goes, everything else goes. But imagine you have 2 rovers, 3 rovers, aerial vehicles, satellites, stations, astronauts, and so on. The decision-making space is ballooning. So the amount of things that you can decide in the wrong way is inflating in the same way. So the question is, where do you deploy what? And it's not just about where do you take the next Raman spectra, but you also have to take into account what's the data volume? How do you get it back to Earth? How long does it take to do an interpretation of that spectrum to a point where you can make an operational decision and then feed it back to the flight planning so it ends up in the field again? And so we are basically doing like it's much too detailed to go into, this is just a fraction of the entire scheme here. But you basically do a zoom in. You start with orbital reconnaissance. That's already happening to some extent. You zoom in, maybe aerial reconnaissance. You send a rover there. They send the humans there. You take a subsurface sample and you go microscopic. Yeah? You zoom in and then go to the smaller part. And then you decide which rock to take with you. So it's about the context and then about the details. And that needs a very diligent planning, especially if you have a dynamic situation, because you might have, a weather situation on Mars, that there is maybe a dust storm coming, a radiation warning, whatsoever, equipment breaks down, or you discover something super interesting or so. So it's a very dynamic thing to a point that is too complex and too cumbersome for humans to do. So we're just switching now from literally whiteboard drawings to Excel sheets, and the next thing will be AI. So that's a big hot topic we're looking into right now. but on with Israel. There was quite it's always this magic, and all of you have been to the missions know this effect. You fly in a large airport with written lights of the night, and within like a day or two, you are in the middle of the desert basically, and the only thing you see is or hear is the wind and the scream of an eagle maybe. Huh? And so this was the station that was. The mission was hosted by the Israeli Space Agency, and so they set up with the fantastic help of OeWF a station that was built upon the existing DMAR station. Just a few, I won't go into details unfortunately for the time restraints, but also with long-range mobility of course. You also want to transport not only samples but equipment as well. So you want to have robotic helpers like this one here. This thing can transport 250 kilograms, can be tailor-braided with remote control or via satellite or as an autonomous follow-me mode. So it's like a little donkey that is following the astronaut and is basically your porter for transporting stuff. Very, very cool thing. You're not allowed to ride it, officially. Okay. What is important is we're also looking into the synergy effects. Like this is a model plane version of the Osprey, like a vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, taking up like a helicopter, has a tilt rotor and then flies over. So this is used for an autonomous mapping, like the digital elevation model, with a 2 centimeter resolution. This is here the station, for instance, the solar panels, and these are just image errors here, but you get some topography information that is processed back in Austria and then sent back via satellite to the station, especially to the rover, like a Mercator rover from the Technical University of Graz, which then does autonomous navigation. You tell it where it should go, and the rover decides himself. It sounds like an almost trivial problem because you have Waymo's driving in the US as a taxi and autonomous driving, but it's a huge difference if you're driving on the road when you go left, right, backwards and forwards versus going in open terrain, because again the decision-making space is much higher and you not only have to observe things like inclination but also slippery slopes. So the wheels detect a road slip, for instance, or a soil slip, and you have to calculate this into the factoring of the traverse planning, for instance. And then, of course, there's a lot of non-scientific ramifications, ripple effects of a mission like this. Like this was from Oman. We had a live session from a live link from the Oman session mission to the Corpus meeting of the United Nations in Austria. So it was, I think, one of the few times where I actually have United Nations talks given from Mars under quotation marks. Again, we did 15 of those missions. There are 2 more coming up, so I would shamelessly do some advertisement now. One is in April 27, we go to Portugal with a medium fidelity mission, which means it's going to be a short mission, maybe just 2 weeks. Not all this is consolidated yet, in an area that is not a big desert, but we don't have big deserts in Europe yet. This is meant to be a stepping stone. Think of a gold-plated dress rehearsal, so to say, for the October 28 mission. So it's supposed to be a double mission. The announcement of opportunity will likely come out before the end of the year, where we have all the details, how to apply, what type of research we're looking into, what are the logistics issues, what is the roadmap, when do we have flight readiness reviews, and so on. And then probably around Easter next year, we're going to have the experiment selection, then the onboarding starts. So the proponents for the experiments have at least 1 year for going through a funding cycle and building their experiments. And we have already a couple of parties that are interested from the German Space Agency with cooperative robotics, for instance. So there's a few things to come, basically. Secondly, second part of the advertisement is we are now selecting a new class of analog astronauts. It's all on the website, the details, of course. The submission deadline is 7th of December 2025, 23:59 CET, via online applications. If you're 1 minute too late, it will not be accepted anymore. It is restricted unfortunately, because of legal reasons, to European member state citizens. The main reason is some of the equipment we are operating is IPR, not only IPR, but also export restricted or operation restricted, and so we are unfortunately limited here. It's unfair, I know, but it is the way it is. There's a lot of requirements we're looking into. One of the ones that some people are quickly dropping out is the size, 165 to 195, because of the suits, and at least 55 kilograms. That is hopefully... yeah. Okay. Otherwise, eat more knödel. The selection is in 3 steps. So we first basically look into formal checks. Are you from the right country? Do you have a proper technical, scientific, or piloting background? We have F-16 pilots applying already. The second part, we do the select out criteria. That means we're looking for deficiencies. Like, do you have a heart valve irregularity? Do you have a something that is anthropometric standards are not meeting the NASA SG 3001 standard or so? So we're looking for problems, yeah? And don't worry. There are no healthy people on this planet. There are only people who have not been investigated enough. Okay. So everybody has, including myself, has deficiencies. The question is what the medical teams tolerate, basically. And then for those 35, so 35 are invited to the B selection, and from then we're going down to 16 candidates. Probably all the 16 would be right material already, because at that point we have a lot of psychological assessments already. But they are downsized from 16 to 6, maybe 8 in the C selection, which is the select in part. So you first go formal qualification, then select out, and then select in criteria. That means you're good at something, very good at something, maybe even more than one something. Yeah, like you would be, an IT professional that also has a medical background, for instance. You're an astrophysicist who is a good cook. Yeah. So we're looking for also complementary competence as well. Like I'm not spoiling anything, but one of the questions in the administrative interview is you have a panel of people who are selecting the candidates, and you're the poor guy or lady sitting in front of it. It's like in a jury panel, and you can really get the tough questions, right? The tough questions. Okay, so really squeeze them in. Yeah. And suddenly one of the jury members says, "Okay, can you tell us a joke? Can you tell us a joke, please?" Right? All that like this. So it's really the social competence that is also something we're looking for. We're not looking for a superwoman or superman. We're looking for a healthy, dedicated individual that has also social warmth. Yeah? It's the kind of person where I say, gosh, I would like to go for an after-work beer with that person because he or she has surely some cool stories to tell, right? That's the person we're looking into. The rest will teach you. Huh? And I would like to conclude here. And then the training starts over 5 months in 5 blocks of typically 3 to 4 days, mostly in Innsbruck and Munich and Vienna. So you get lots of system training, crash course in planetology, medical training, psychological training, Wi-Fi training, communication training. You learn how to fly a simplified Soyuz simulator, so you learn how to dock to the space station in a slightly simplified way. You learn how to stop a strong bleeding. You learn how to, how to talk to school children at the press. All those things. That's all part of that. And then we'll finish that by probably midsummer this year, next year. And to have a few people commenting on that, we have, if that works out, a small video prepared. If that works out. Oh yeah, great. No, not really, right?
I already watched it. I think it was.
Oh, right. I just reload. We're not looking for Superman, Superwoman. We're looking for people who are extremely passionate about space.
Determined or motivated, stress resilient. Then should be a team player.
Adaptable and detail oriented. Smart, curious, people who can make science possible.
Able to super focus on a task, not be distracted.
Able to cope with frustration, adaptive to the extreme environment.
Physically fit, brain running and endurance.
The training for analog astronauts is one of the most rigorous ones there is on this planet. It's a 5-month basic training, not continuous, but in segments.
We spent 5 weekends of training, 3 days, 24/7, with a group of people. The schedule it were very tight, so that after 3 days you're really exhausted.
Where you both have physical, psychological training, system training, you learn about planetology,
navigating by the stars,
about spacecraft engineering, about orbital dynamics,
driving a quad down a hill,
about how space agencies work.
Soyuz simulator that we were allowed to use and train on that.
We train people to have a high situational awareness.
steer a drone or a rover.
Some Space Forum has a very complex spacesuit. You need to know how it works.
All the tasks in the field is a part of science.
We execute experiments, so we need to know how this experiment needs to be done, how to communicate to our flight control team.
The analog astronaut selection is a group selection. It's not about being the best at everything, it's about how you work together with others.
We're looking for people who complement a very, very experienced core of analog astronauts. So if this had caught your attention and you think you are the right staff, hit us. And that brings me to the end of the presentation. On to Mars.
Thank you very much. I think we have time for some questions. Maybe just one first. Sure. Is there an age constraint for the?
You have to be at least 25 years old. I think you meet that criteria.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, please.
So you already talked a little bit about what you're looking for, but in the day-to-day life in the habitat, what soft and hard skills make the difference? What would you say?
Can you rephrase the question? I'm not sure if I understood it fully.
So like in the day-to-day life in the habitat, what soft skills the analog astronaut or hard skills need to be available to the person? So
Yeah. First of all, as long as you work inside the habitat, it's a mixture between a student dormitory and a laboratory environment. Yeah? So structured day, that's different to the student dormitory. So you're chasing the flight plan. Some people call it the fight plan. And you have a progression bar that tells you when to brush your teeth and when to do the dishes. And that means laboratory skills with IT mix. That's some basics of like, we like it if you know how to work on a non-Windows operating system, for instance. Yeah, following procedures. Think of a pilot that does a pre-flight airplane check, and no matter how experienced they are, even after 50 years professional careers, they still go through every step like they would do it for the first time. Though you are, and I don't mean this in a negative way. I'm an analog astronaut myself. I'm a trained monkey. I'm a spam in the can that is there as an extended arms, ears, and eyes of the research people who taught me how to do this. Yeah? I'm part of a team in a way. So leave the ego at the door. The soft skills are you will be trained to listen to each other and to know the strengths and weaknesses of everybody else, so that by the tone of the voice of your colleagues, you can feel what they need. Yeah? And there's always this internal bargaining. Okay, I do the dishes, and for that I get this granola bar from your dessert, for instance. That's perfectly okay. I think one of the most important skills is, and we'll train you for that, to not miss the best opportunity to say nothing. Yeah? Anything that is good for a marriage is good for analog astronauts as well. Yeah? It's a typical thing that the need for cleanliness differs from person to person, like in a student dormitory. Yeah, and that is the one who is squeezing out the pasta tube with the ketchup very diligently, and the next one comes like this. That's a conflict situation. Yeah, and it builds up over time. Yeah, it's like in a marriage. After 10 years, somebody explodes, and because somebody else is not putting the socks in parallel all the time in the drawer, and sometimes just one drop and it explodes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. For instance, the isolation is always relative, because you can in principle walk out and you know that you're... well, let's put it this way. You know that you're not on Mars, but mentally you're not fully on Earth either. So that isolation, unless it's a research question, we can ignore that deficiency in a way. So we always ask, what is the purpose of the research experiments, and we tailor the simulation to that. We don't overdo it. We don't do extra efforts that are not needed. That's very important to do. And this isolation factor is quite strong, and that's in my second MDRS mission. I had this. There was Crew 47, one of the two-digit missions. My first one was Crew 11 many years ago. I remember the time when we had the conclusion of the mission. So the background story was we go to deep sleep on Mars and wake up on Earth, just to have a nice framing story. And so we all went to the airlock, not with a suit, but just with your overalls. Yeah. And the commander would unlock, and we had installed a few more little lights in the station so that the warning light would go off if the inner door is not shut before you open the outer door, because that's very unhealthy if you do this on Mars, obviously, on the airlock. And so he would unlock the outer door, the alarm would go off, and he would squeeze out the heavy outer door, and everybody in the crew in the airlock went like, no, it doesn't really make sense, right? But just to say how intense that can be. Yeah? So it is the more, and this applies to every single simulation on this planet, I would say, the mindset you bring into the mission, the ability to dive into experience is the one factor that gives you the most reward. That gives you the uniqueness of the experience. Oh, you're first and then you, please.
What's the optimal crew size?
Six. This is living of a gut feeling in a way. The reason is that with 6 people, if they have typically 2 qualifications, like a medical doctor and engineer, for instance, you can cover most of the competences you need with a little bit of redundancy. Yeah. The least important one is the commander. They are all leadership people, of course. Yeah. But what if the doctor falls ill? Yeah. There should be a second qualified person on board. Yeah. So that's one thing.
How tight or close? Oh, sorry.
You were first and then Bob. Yes.
How tight or close is the collaboration with other space agencies like the ESA or the NASA, and do the results of these missions?
Yes. When we began, we were, and I think every group experiences who's doing this, we were considered as high-tech live-action role play, high-tech LARP. It has changed now because there are publications out there. We have people who underwent the experience and then grew into more senior positions in the agency world. That's the reason why ESA has the lunar facility, for instance, or the HERA in the US and so. We have close ties with people who are in the analog research world in the agencies. So was part of the ESA topical team on human factors and analogs, for instance. So it's slowly percolating into the system. And what's now palpable is the ISS has an expiration date. And Lunar Gateway will probably come, hopefully, yeah, but it's not the same amount of missions, astronauts, and so on. So what do we do with the astronaut corps? And so analog research has been discovered as a good mean to still keep the astronauts in training, discover new methodologies maybe or so at a low cost. It's a methadone program of spaceflight for the agencies. And at the same time, we realized that emerging spacefaring countries, up to now, usually, what do they do first? They build a CubeSat. $500,000, and you import a company from the outside, some consultants, you add 15 students from a local tech university, they fly the CubeSat for a year, the orbits, and that's it. And the students are gone because they get better jobs outside the country, right? But what they realize now, and we've heard this from several emerging spacefaring countries, analog research is a much broader thing where you can bring in national competences, robotics, medical community, psychological community, geo community, and so on. And you have it, we have in-house capacity in the country. That means it's much more long-term sustainable to build upon that at less the costs of a CubeSat mission. And so some countries are switching or considering to switch the methodology here. Bob, yes.
Yeah, if I was to compare your program with that the Mars Society has done at MDRS and Flashline. Yours is much more planned, ours is much more improvisational, okay? You've done 20 missions, we've done 340. I would say we underplan and you overplan. You know, now of course you say, well, this is the difference between Americans and Germans.
We're Austrians. We're the better Germans.
Okay, but now, and I recognize that we certainly do underplan, and that is part of a function of having to do so many missions you cannot possibly. But do you really think that you can plan a real Mars mission and schedule when people use their toothbrush? I mean, people don't do that in their. When you actually like even say, okay, forget about private life. When you run a business, if you're running a newspaper or something,
Yes.
okay, and people are just trying to do their jobs effectively, there is a certain amount of scheduling, but there's also a fair amount of flexibility.
Yes and no. So the planning for the mission, the first flight plan editions usually come out half a year before the actual mission. It's a reference planning. The thing is that due to the complexity of the experiments and the logistics and the infrastructure, it's very tough for people to remember all the ramifications of changing something. Like if you, let's switch on the oven because I'm having cold. Well, that has a difference in the power supply, of course, in the power, in the load. And so this is a simplified example now, but you pull one switch and there's a lot of ramification. That means it might be challenging to think through all the consequences of an action. Doesn't have to be life-threatening. Can be a power shortage, can be I'm lacking 2 hours of sleep because of something or so. And so if you have a planning team in the background who knows you very well, whom you trust, and you have a on-the-spot situation awareness of the condition of does it work, does it not work, does it need refurbishing or so, they can anticipate there is a cycling of a ventilator that's to be done or so. Then you can do the planning 3 days in advance. That's our routine. And you have mechanisms to do an almost on the spot within hours of adjustments. So when the astronauts say, well, guys, this workload is killing me, we have a mechanism to shift the workload. Yeah? And so as long as you have high situation awareness, this decision-making load is taken off the brains of the astronauts, and we're very grateful for that. Yeah? There still is lots of decision-making leeway when you're out in the field, for instance. For instance, because of the time delay, you will not be able to tell, like during a Apollo mission, like hit that rock and drill a hole there, but next week explore that valley, right? And so they have a tool set where they can determine the methodologies out of their box, basically. And so, and that's also like modern astronaut training works. And so, by definition, and that's what we hear from the geoscience community, the best geologists are the ones that have seen the most rocks. So if you're on Mars and just spend a couple of days here, you're compensating for years of theoretical studies maybe, right? And we have find a compromise on that, yes.
Last question, I think. Then we have coffee break, you know, not the next presentation, but a coffee break at 10.
No, it's
10, 10. Anyway, 10 past 10. But last question for now. Yeah.
So, when it comes to analysis mission, sometimes when you go there, it's like life-changing for you, the whole perspective change. That you do that pre-training, really long one, but you didn't mention anything what happens after with analog astronauts.
Oh, sure.
After they come out of the habitat.
Yes.
In some cases, you really need someone to talk about it, to
Yes.
release your emotions. Do you do?
Yes, there is an entire return to Earth process that starts with technical debriefings, psychological debriefings. There's, of course, a shitload of press activities to be done. There are people writing books. I think we have 3 books now that came out from the Austrian Space Forum. And also the crew cohesion remains afterwards, for the good or for the bad. So the way how the crew exits the mission is the condition that is kept on standby until the next mission. So if there's a conflict, and even if you do the mission, if they're the same two people again, the conflict people are together 5 years afterwards, they pick up where they left 5 years ago. It's like frozen. That's quite an interesting phenomenon. Yeah. All right. Otherwise, I'll be here until the end of the day. So
Yeah.
don't hit me.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.